Hello, so today I'm going to do a video on this mask, which is the Chinese MF35, which is basically the industrial variant, sort of export variant of the Chinese FMJ09, which is their current army issue sort of military mask. And this is China as in Communist China, PLA China, not, Taiwan. So anyway, thanks to Hype for letting me buy this through him, because obviously it's quite cool to get one of these. So if you buy an MF35, for all extents and purposes, it's an FMJ09. As far as I'm aware, there's no design differences between the military mask and the industrial one. It's just technically you're buying it as an industrial one if it's exported. And he also sent me this because you can buy the carriers separately. So this would normally come in sort of one of those like orange drawstring bags or whatever. But you can get like the military style packs for them anyway, the satchels. So that has like molly clips on the back, so you can put it on a chest rig or just a utility belt, or hang it up with a shoulder strap. But anyway, so this is the mask itself. Now this might look very familiar to you because the MF35 uses mostly the same face piece as the MF11D. So let me pan the camera around because that's out of frame. So there is the MF11D, and as you can probably see, nearly all of it's the same. Now this blanking plug is one I made myself, so let's remove that so that doesn't get in your way and distract you. So, looking at the two, they're basically identical other than the fact that one's panoramic and one isn't. Now the other difference is if I open this bit up, if it's not too tight, there we go. The MF35 or the FMJ09 uses the sort of drum skin style rubber membrane for the voice diaphragm, and it uses just a regular umbrella exhale valve. You can also notice that there's a microphone connector in there, if you see that. So that's that there, that's built into that one. There's no drinking tube on this. Also you notice it has a complete rip-off of the S10 sort of secondary voice emitter, voice diaphragm that the Klansman radio clips onto. The interesting thing is, obviously that's something they obviously copied for the FMJ08, which was the S10 rip-off, and it's sort of carried over onto this mask. Now, annoyingly, without a screwdriver I can't get this one off, probably, because it generally goes on way too tight to get off without, like, breaking my nail off. But underneath this one, the weird thing is that this sort of industrial variant, as well as the panoramic lens, actually has a better voice diaphragm system on it, which is kind of weird, because everything else about these masks is the same and made in the same factory. If I show you that from the inside, rather than having the blue drum skin, this has like a little plastic disc between two metal perforated sheets. I imagine this might be slightly stronger or more chemical resistant, but this one certainly sounds better if you speak through them. Can't remember if this one actually has a voice connector as well. Looking at it, I don't think this does, not that you can see through it very well on the video. But that's probably another difference, is this one's got the microphone connector on. Although, in theory, you could probably cannibalise the parts for them and make the same thing on one mask. But anyway, so that's just literally a cover with a grill on it. That's all that does, it's just protective cover. And that goes on facing downwards, like that. So then you've got the gap there to kind of prise it off if you want to. So the mask itself is pretty straightforward and basic, but good. You've got your sort of nice butyl rubber face piece that's fairly comfortable. You've got a 6-point mesh head harness with elasticated straps. And the default filter that comes with this mask is a Ghost filter. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But the interesting thing Hype said is if you see in there if the camera focuses, there's a weight written there in grams. Does that say 217 grams. And apparently when these filters expire, they pick up about 10 grams plus of weight. So if you get some scales out, you can weigh the filter to work out if it's still working or not. Although bear in mind, against sort of regular organic vapours, you'd find in your house or whatever, it could probably be technically expired to a military standard, but still block smells perfectly fine. So that's the filter for this. Pretty boring looking on the outside, but obviously I think it's basically an ABEC 1 P3 filter or ABEC 2 P3 filter. But anyway, there's that. So, the only major differences, if I just zoom out slightly, between these two masks, just to go over it again, because I've already done a video on this mask. This one has two eyepieces, this one has a panoramic lens. That one has a slightly better but maybe more fragile voice emitter. This one has sort of a rubber style one. This one has a fixed sort of voice emitter on one side like the S10 does, This one has a blanking plug system, so you you know, put a blanking plug in on the system side you want to use. So that's that, but otherwise they are pretty much identical. Now here's the most interesting bit. You probably want to see me put it on. Also in there are 2 coffee can filters I will show you in a future video, which Hype sent me for free with one of the masks, which was cool. So I've got some sort of modern, decent, standard Chinese coffee can filters that look like the Soviet type ones but are safe. So anyway, let me put the mask on so you can see how it looks and sounds and everything. So there we go, that's it on. Fairly comfortable. It feels very similar when you have it on to the MF11D. I find it weird that this one's industrial designation is MF35 and the other one's MF11D. You'd think that other one would be MF35D or something, seeing as it's the same face piece. But there you go. So basically, the closest Western mask to probably compare this to is the Swedish for Shader or Skied Mask 90, whatever it's called, you know, the A4, F2A4. It's very similar to that in terms of how the mask feels, in terms of, you know, mask sort of design, face seal, head harness, everything like that. The panoramic mask on the other one is obviously nicer. There's that. But in terms of vision, you don't really get much difference, because as most people know, if you're looking for a mask like this, you don't notice the big bit in front of your eyes. That just sort of blurs in the middle. But yeah, easy enough to breathe through. Strap system is very straightforward, as said. So you can do the thing with this like most Western masks, where you can pre-adjust the other sort of 2 straps, 4 straps to your head, and then the bottom 2 straps, the ones you loosen and then tighten when you put the mask on. So this is the mask in size large, so hopefully you can hear it alright. As said, although the voice emitter is better on the other one, the rubber one on this isn't bad, and obviously this is designed so you can just have a microphone system attached to it. Where's the connector? There. Yeah, there. So overall, yeah, this is a pretty damn good mask for what it is. You know, there's nothing amazing about it. It doesn't have any super cool features, you know. But it's comfortable and works. So yeah, this, if it's in Chinese military service, is known as the FMJ09. If it's exported, it's called the MF35. A bit like, you know, the difference between, I guess, a PMG2 and a GB5M. It's that kind of thing, depending on, you know, which use the mask's currently in. But there you go. It's a straightforward, fairly comfortable mask. You know, like I said, it's not going to win any awards for being super innovative. In all honesty, the current Chinese military stuff is kind of like Western masks, as probably around the time of the CT12, FM12, all those sort of masks, you know, like 90s, early 2000s Western masks, just a bit better rubbers. So they don't really have any new innovations on these, but they're built to a very good standard for what they are. There's certainly nothing in these masks I imagine would fail easily, so it'd be very good if you wanted to buy one of these masks just for general use. I imagine if you could get one for a decent price. They're certainly built well enough. So at some point as well, I'll do a video on all my Chinese masks, because I've got quite a few now, and it'd be quite interesting to line up all of the military or like industrial export variants of the same masks next to each other. Because I believe I've got a Type 64 that's modified to be 40mm GOST as opposed to have a hose permanently attached to it. A Type 65, a Type 69, the FMJ05, the FMJ08, and essentially this is the FMJ09 or MF35. I've got other Chinese sort of industrial masks and things as well, but these are the kind of like military timeline of masks I've got. I'd say this is probably better than the FMJ08, because the FMJ08 is essentially an S10 with some changes to it, whereas this is sort of enough new features. The main difference with this, between this and older Chinese masks, is this and this are separate valves, as opposed to on the earlier Chinese masks, you had the exhale ring around the outside and then the blue sort of greeny membrane type thing in the middle. So this has 2 separate sort of voice, has a separate voice diaphragm and exhale valve rather than being like a combined piece. So I guess that makes it a bit stronger. Also means if you had to replace the valves, that would be much easier, because you could just get a simple umbrella valve to replace that one if it failed. That might actually have 2 exhale valves, saying that. I'm just trying to see, is there a separate inner one there? No. Well, I was just trying to see there. I probably can't see it very well now. is I was wondering if it had that kind of system, you know, where there's an exhale valve, then a sort of gap in between, and then the other exhale valve. But obviously, as you can see, this is a proper umbrella valve. It certainly isn't hanging loose, so that's good. And yeah, that's your voice diaphragm, and that's quite thick rubber on this one actually, for what it is. You know, if you put a knife in it, it would certainly break, but it's not going to break from, you know, wear and tear very easily. Anyway, so there you go. Chinese FMJ09 or MF35, depending on, you know, if it's an export version or military one, as far as I'm aware. You'd have to ask Hype for all the details regarding, you know, how the Chinese masks have slight different designations depending on the parts kits they come with and everything. But essentially, this would be the one that would be an MF35 in one of those, like, just sort of gym bag style bags. But Hype also sent me the military style carriers you can get separately, so it's more like the military kit because that's a bit more interesting. But anyway, so this is the current PLA Army mask. There's probably going to be an FMJ10 that's unobtainium at the moment, I imagine. Sort of, you can find pictures of them online, but this is like the current standard issue mask. And yeah, it's pretty good for what it is, you know. As I said, there's nothing groundbreaking about this, but it's a perfectly functional, good mask. And I'll do another video later on as well, where I weigh the Chinese filters to see if we can work out if that's a good way of telling if they've expired or not, because that's kind of a thing I'd never thought to do before. Anyway, and as I said, if you want to know the production date of these filters, it's actually under the cap, so you can't see it until you've opened it. But there's a label in there that says September 2020. And then it says 217 grams. So, yeah, when that date was that was the weight of the filter. So obviously the idea is that over time they get heavier as the charcoal and everything absorbs more crap from the air. And obviously the particle filter, the more dust and things that get stuck in it, the heavier it gets. But these are perfectly safe as well. There's no asbestos in them, just in case anybody asks. So there we go. This is technically my most modern mask, I guess. If the mask is around the same time period as the filter, it's from, you know, the late part of 2020, and it is a pretty cool mask. But there you go, enough waffling.